Hello, Facebook fans and YouTube fans of DX Engineering. It's Friday afternoon here in the Eastern Time Zone of the USA. It's time for the weekend special. You never know what you're going to get. And today, we got a really good one. We've got a great guest. It's John Stratton, N5AUS, who is a director at the ARRL and a great attorney. John, welcome.
Tim, thank you for having us and letting the league come and talk to you about the legislation.
Yeah. So, what do you have? What do you got, John?
The league has been working for about 30 years on trying to eliminate private land use restrictions that prohibits amateur radio from operating at residences. In 1985, when the FCC approved PRB1, we thought we had a path forward. But since 1985, every one of our efforts with the FCC to persuade them to extend PRB1 or something similar to private land use restrictions has been declined. The FCC has taken the position that they will make that change when Congress directs them to do so. In '96, Congress did direct the FCC to eliminate all private land use restrictions on TV antennas, TV support structures, towers, masts, satellite dishes. Then shortly after that, they also extended that to wireless broadband antennas and support structures. But all that involved video programming. And because amateur radio is not part of video programming, the FCC declined to extend the rights under OTAR, over-the-air reception devices, to amateur radio. So after about 30 years of trying everything we knew that didn't work, in 2014, the league filed a bill that was a modified PRB1 bill in Congress, attempting to persuade Congress to direct the FCC to grant relief. That bill went through several iterations, but unfortunately, it became a badly amended, disastrous bill. And in 2019, the board removed it, asked our sponsors in Congress to remove it. And then since then, we've been trying to develop legislation that's beneficial to amateur radio. That's resulted on December 22nd of HR 9670 being filed by Congressman Bill Johnson out of Ohio. That bill, if passed, will eliminate all private land use restrictions on the operation of amateur radio for private residences.
It's amazing work, but how come it took so long?
Working with the first thought the league had after 1985 was to work with the FCC. If you grant PRB1, which eliminated interference by cities and counties and granted amateur radio rights, including the right to go to federal court to seek relief, we thought the FCC would be willing to extend it. We filed, I believe, 2 different petitions for the FCC seeking that relief, but the FCC has declined each time. And again, its response to us is, we will do that when Congress tells us to do it. When the over-the-air reception device rules were mandated by Congress in 1996, when it amended the Communications Act, we thought they would extend the same protections. Under the OTAR rules, if you want to put up a TV antenna, a TV tower, a wireless internet antenna, a satellite dish, you don't have to ask your homeowner association for permission. They cannot impose any restrictions. The only guidelines are set by the Federal Communications Commission, and even if your HOA objects, it has to go to the FCC to get permission to fight you. And by the way, we don't know of any homeowner association that's prevailed in front of the FCC since 1996. So when that failed, we started in 2014 with the actual filing legislation. Nothing moves rapidly in Congress. You've got to educate people as to why you need the relief, who you are, what the benefits are. I mean, if you go back to 1917, when Hiram Percy Maxim tried to recover the frequencies for amateur radio, and when the Navy said, it's ours, we're not going to do it, it took Hiram, I think, 2 years before Congress to get them to re-grant the right to operate amateur radio. First couple times he failed, then he finally got it passed. So you look at the same thing. Congress is a huge institution. We are a small special interest group. We don't know of any amateur radio operators in Congress. There are a few staff members that are. So you have to find a sponsor who's willing to carry your legislation. Now we can find almost anyone, like Representative Tim Duffy, who'll be happy to file a bill. That's not what we want. What you want is a sponsor who believes in your cause, believes it needs to be changed, and who is willing to pass your bill. We've talked to a lot of people, and we were fortunate to find about a year ago Bill Johnson. And Congressman Johnson has made it clear he doesn't fall in the category of filing bills and thanking us for showing up. He's made clear in meetings with him personally that he intends to pass this bill. That is significant. So we have a lead sponsor that is willing to see to an amateur radio gets released. But it's just time, Tim. It takes time to get Congress to move.
It takes time, and it takes good people. And I'm glad, I work in Ohio, so it's Bill Johnson is a great guy, and of course Michael Coulter is on here today with us as well, the Chief Financial Officer of DARA, and his comment is that amateur radio community is fortunate to have John working for us, you, John, and thanks for all you do. And of course, that represents Hamvention and all the things that are going on there. So, it took a long time, but you got there, John.
It took in 2019, the board withdrew the old bill because it was so bad. It took us a year from 19 to 20 to come up with a language that various sponsors in the FCC had looked at and thought was acceptable. And then it took us from 2020 until this year, the spring of 2020, to find a sponsor that was going to support the bill all the way through, and that's Bill Johnson. Since the spring of this year, I've been working with the congressman on working out the language, getting everyone to agree on the final language that it was filed on December 22nd. And to be fair, I'm not the only one working on this at the league. Members of the current committee are Tom Abernathy, W3TOM. He's now the retired Atlantic director. Mm-hmm. The former New England director, Fred Hopengarten, K3LR, is co-author of the legislation with me. And the West Gulf Vice Director, Lee Cooper, W5LHC, has been very active. He's a member of the committee. And David Siddell, our FCC counsel, K3ZJ, has been also very helpful with this. So it's not just a single person.
Right. Now, Scott Wright chimes in. He says, why are things different now, especially when we had Representative Greg Walden, who was a ham and chaired a subcommittee with jurisdiction? Seems to me we are at a less advantaged spot now.
Not really. Congressman Walden did carry the bill, but Congressman Walden directed our people who were working on the bill at the time to make compromises, or he suggested they compromise with our opponents, community association institutes. They're the national group that represents the HOAs. That resulted in language that, had it passed, would have wiped out amateur radio, in my opinion, in the residential operations throughout the country. You can't really blame the congressman for it, but he wanted some type of agreement. The agreement worked out to be disastrous for amateur radio. So the result was we had to withdraw that bill from Congress. We did that in January 2019. I don't think we're at a less advantageous spot at all.
Good.
The legislation doesn't have to have an amateur radio operator sitting in an elected seat to get it passed. What you need are people who believe in amateur radio. Congressman Johnson does. There are a lot of other congressmen with whom we've spoken on both the Democrat side and Republican side who have indicated they would like to co-sponsor the bill and see to it amateur radio gets relief. And we're waiting right now for all of them to read the language, be comfortable with it, and then talk to Congressman Johnson and us by being co-sponsors. So we're not in a worst case situation. We're in a better situation.
Good. We've got Eduardo says, so the bill filed in December 2022 is still alive within the new 2023 Congress?
That's a good question, Eduardo, but the answer would be no. Congress meets for 2-year sessions. The last session started, it was the 117th session. It ended at noon, I believe, on January 3rd, 2023. The new congressional session is the 118th. When a Congress rolls over, if legislation has not been passed by the House and the Senate, then all the bills die, and you have to refile them. That's where we are now.
Right.
Congressman Johnson is, we're waiting at the moment for the committees to be appointed, the chairman to be appointed, get the co-sponsors to work with Congressman Johnson to sign up, and it'll be refiled. But we knew when we filed at the end of December 22nd, that it would not survive that Congress, but we had good reasons for filing at the end. We wanted the members to be able to see the language because they hadn't seen it before. And the result is that there's a lot of excitement across the country for the members. We also wanted to see the potential co-sponsors, let the potential co-sponsors review the language. I mean, it's like asking you out on a blind date and you don't know who your blind date is. Maybe it's good, maybe it's bad. So they all wanted to see the language before they signed up. Now they've seen it, and we expect to pick up our co-sponsors.
That's great. Ray Higgins is on W2RE.
Hello, Ray.
And Ray is a tremendous guy and a great amateur, and also with remote ham radio. This is needed. It's why RHR was created. I'm in the tower business. I deal with HOAs all the time. And Ray, we're very hopeful that this helps you. And we thank you for all the things you do for this great hobby. And Eduardo also chimes in with thanks, John, for your explanation on this. John, give us just a quick update on how things are going at the ARRL.
Well, the board meeting is on the Friday, the 20th and 21st. We have 2 meetings every year. This is January meeting. It's going well. We've got a lot to cover. We've got the major financial issues to cover at the meeting. We have consideration of changing how we assist field service section managers and SECs. We've got the budget for legislative effort to be approved. We've in the past year, the Emergency Communications Field Service Committee, which is the new 3rd standing committee, has made modifications and increased support for the clubs. There's a lot of things we have to get approved, but the league is healthy. We're going to survive. We just need another 700,000 members.
There we go. Well, John, I mean, how many years have you been a volunteer in office for the ARRL?
I became licensed in 2006. I mean, like a lot of people in the hobby, I got started in high school, and then girls and cars and college came along. So I deferred doing anything else until after 2006. In 2007, I was made the director of legislative efforts for the West Gulf under Dr. Woolwick, who was division director at the time. And then in 2010, I was appointed vice director for the West Gulf, and then was elected that same year. I've been on the board of directors since 2011.
Thank you so much for your service. I mean, this is a behind the scenes, job that sometimes is thankless. Let's call it what it is, but it is so important. And tell everybody what the West Gulf Division encompasses.
Essentially, the Old West, Texas and Oklahoma. Which is it's always fascinating for people from on the board who aren't familiar with Texas and Oklahoma to realize how big these 2 states are.
Texas is huge,
but we have 3 sections in Texas. Oklahoma is its own section. I think we have 55,000 plus members, and 55,000 licensees in Texas and Oklahoma.
That's incredible. Well, John, thanks so much for coming on today and talking about this bill, and for all your efforts to push this forward. And we look forward to more exciting things, here in the future.
Let me make a couple of comments.
Sure.
Once the bill is refiled, then we'll be reaching out to the members like we did on past legislation, asking them to contact the congressman. When the bill rolls over the Senate, we'll ask them to contact the senators. But right now, this is a House-led effort. We'll be getting news out from various outlets about what we're trying to do. And it would be very helpful if all the members would help support it by another means by making donations. We have a legislative adequacy fund, and any contribution anyone makes goes straight to that fund. It's not spent for anything else, and it helps us pay for the expenses of Congress, because this is not an inexpensive effort. Just
Well,
showing up in Congress is expensive.
yeah, it is. And thanks so much for updating us on that as well. And we wish you the best. And thank you for all your efforts. And thank you for what you're doing for the best hobby in the world.
Tim, thank you very much for letting us come and talk about it.
Okay. And thanks to all of you for watching. And we'll be back on Tuesday for Tuesdays with DX Engineering. Until then, 73 from DX Engineering.
73, Tim, and thanks for everyone for watching and listening. Have a good weekend.